It seems that most movies now fall into one of two categories. They're either the best thing since sliced bread, or the worst thing since, unsliced bread, I guess. This means that while some movies get all of the hype, others pass under the radar and don't quite get the attention they really deserve. And yeah, the term underrated is usually loosely defined, and a quick debate about its criteria caused actual anarchy in the What Culture offices before recording this. Adam Cleary literally nearly killed a man. For some semblance of fairness, then, I've taken into account everything from Rotten Tomatoes ratings, not just the percentage, may I add, to IMDb scores, Metacritic results, box office receipts, awards recognition, and a rather more ineffable sense of place in and out of the cultural conversation. Will that help clear things up? Probably not, but we'll give it a go anyway. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 massively underrated movies from the 2010s. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to stay notified. Ding, ding, done. Number 10. Super. It's an odd time to revisit Super, what with its director James Gunn having recently been fired from Disney over tweets he made around the same time this film was being made. And yet it's also a reminder of why he got the Guardians of the Galaxy job in the first place. Receiving a mixed response from critics with 48% on Rotten Tomatoes and an average of 5.5 out of 10, the movie partly suffered, and indeed still does suffer, from unfavourable comparisons to Kick-Ass, which was released at around the same time. And yeah, the humour is jet black and occasionally a bit edgelord, although it is still very funny when it wants to be. The superhero romp still has the heart you'd expect from a Gunn flick, with Rainn Wilson and Ellen Page bringing their goddamn A-games. It may be a little rough around the edges, but that works entirely in its favour. Number 9. Green Room. In a way, if you couldn't get a movie based around a punk rock band being locked inside a club with a bunch of murderous neo-Nazis to work, then you probably shouldn't be in this industry. Fortunately, Green Room nailed that premise and then some, giving audiences an unrelentingly violent showdown between an increasingly dwindling band and blood-hungry skinheads. Jeremy Saulnier's taut direction made for a graphic film you'd love to look away from but simply couldn't take your eyes off, even when people start having the skin on their arm being torn off and dogs start eating people alive. With great performances from all of the cast, including an against-type Patrick Stewart who's so menacing you'll forget he ever donned a pair of silver Speedos, the movie manages to be an incredibly grim and claustrophobic dive into hell. Despite that, the movie only boasts a paltry 7 out of 10 on IMDb and 7.7 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes, and it didn't even make back its $5 million budget because there's no justice in the world. Number 8. Swiss Army Man. Swiss Army Man gained a bit of popularity at the time of release because Daniel Radcliffe played a farting corpse. A farting corpse who washes up on an island and saves Paul Dano's Hank from committing suicide. Unsurprisingly, a movie about a flatulent fiend was a difficult sell to mainstream audiences and critics, with it having just 7 out of 10 on IMDb and 6.7 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. However, while the premise of a boffing dead body who can be manipulated like a Swiss Army knife sounds utterly ridiculous, and it kind of is, the movie works strangely as a genuinely moving drama. With excellent performances from Dano and Radcliffe, the film becomes something beyond that silliness and instead works as a quiet, thoughtful meditation on suicide, loneliness, and the meaning of life. And also how a farting man can help somebody escape being trapped on an island. I mean, look at how cool this shit is! Number 7. Macbeth. Assassin's Creed may have been a huge flop, damaging the reputation of director Justin Kurzel, and even stars Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard in the process, but it's worth remembering just how good the trio's first team-up was. Although it didn't receive much fanfare at the time, with a box office haul of just over $16 million and a 6.6 rating on IMDb, Kurzel's Macbeth is a stunning, atmospheric take on one of William Shakespeare's greatest plays. The movie's haunting tone and dazzling visual style perfectly complements its two lead characters, with Fassbender giving one of the great takes on the titular character. With strong action sequences to boot, this really deserves to be remembered among the better Shakespeare adaptations. So far though, it's been lucky to be remembered at all. Number 6. Iron Man 3. Oh boy, this is a big one. Despite performing brilliantly at the box office with a gross of just over $1 billion, time hasn't been too kind to Iron Man 3. It has just 62% on Metacritic and 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb, along with a strong claim to being the most divisive MCU flick ever. However, while MCU movies are now only being lauded for letting individual voices be heard through the franchise machine, Iron Man 3 was doing it first. This may be in the MCU, but it is pure Shane Black, from the subversive nature of the controversial Mandarin twist to just how damn funny it is, and it features one of Robert Downey Jr.'s best performances as Tony Stark. The movie is crucial to his arc and understanding his actions in the future, and it does some brilliant work in picking them apart and putting them back together, giving us a slightly darker movie that also has plenty of heart, humor, and blockbuster action. Number 5. The World's End. Coming 6 years after Hot Fuzz, there was a lot of pressure heaped upon The World's End as the climax to the Cornetto trilogy. Pressure it ultimately buckled under the weight of. Despite its bigger budget, the movie only made just over half of what Fuzz did at the box office, with weaker reviews to boot. And yeah, it's true that the movie isn't as good as Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz, but they're only separated by a single sliver of fried gold, and that barometer often obscures how much The World's End actually gets right. Not only does it expertly send up social sci-fi, but it tragically captures a sense of growing older and being left behind. All the while, Nick Frost beats up a bunch of smashy Eggmen with bar stools attached to his fists. Number 4. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Coming out a year after The Social Network, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was largely praised, but it wasn't loved, gaining only a 7.6 on Rotten Tomatoes and a 71% on Metacritic, and it underperformed at the box office as well, shutting down hopes for a full Fincher trilogy. And with an effective reboot on the way, it's startling just how much this movie seems to have been forgotten about entirely. Fincher's trademarks are all over it, from the icy blue and black color palette marrying perfectly with its frosty setting to the sheer darkness that lies within and a chilling score to boot. Rooney Mara, meanwhile, gives a stunning performance in the lead role, where she is not only completely committed, but runs the full gamut of emotions in a performance where she has to be intelligent, introverted, ferocious, and vulnerable all at the same time. I suppose it is the kind of film Fincher could make in his sleep, but that's still better than 99% of most movies. Number 3. Coherence. The first and only movie so far from James Ward Burkett, Coherence gave film fans one of the best sci-fi tales in years, wrangling out so much drama and intrigue out of a $50,000 project. Difficult to talk about without giving away too much of the mystery, the basic premise sees a group of friends gather for a dinner party on the night a comet is set to pass overhead. Obviously, things get pretty freaky pretty quickly, and the film essentially plays out like a great Black Mirror episode, except without all of the social commentary being shoveled down your throat at every given turn. For a fraction of what it cost to digitally remove Henry Cavill's mustache in Justice League, Burkett made one of the most unique, engrossing sci-fi movies of the decade, and it deserves to be seen by more than the handful of people who caught it in theaters. Number 2. 10 Cloverfield Lane. Despite being a sequel, 10 Cloverfield Lane isn't anything like Cloverfield, and for the most part you wouldn't even know they're connected, but that shows just how strong this franchise can be when it gets things right. Trading in found footage horror for a terse psychological thriller with terrific performances from Mary Elizabeth Winstead and John Goodman, the movie's more about human monsters than it is big alien ones, and that only makes it the perfect counter to the bombastic original. Confined almost entirely to an underground bunker, the setting means director Dan Trachtenberg gets very clever with his shots, allowing things to get really claustrophobic to create a palpable sense of dread throughout the movie. Seriously, it'll make you lose your shit every time I Think We're Alone Now comes on the radio. Number 1. Blue Valentine. Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams have both gone on to bigger things since this little scene indie, but neither of them have delivered better performances than they do here in truly heartbreaking, gut-wrenching fashion. Telling the story of a couple at the beginning of a relationship and the end of their marriage, the movie shifts back and forth in time to peel back the layers of the narrative and its characters, with the director never letting this spiral into convolution. Without being hyperbolic, Blue Valentine isn't particularly easy to watch, and it'll completely tear out your insides unless you're utterly bereft of feelings and emotions. But it's such a gripping, sad, and sometimes beautiful story of love and loss that it's worth going through the pain for. and all that blood, sweat, and tears for a meager 7.4 on IMDb, you can only assume it hurt those people way too much. So that's our list. I don't know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think these movies are underrated, or am I talking absolute bolo? Either way, while you're there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh, you've been watching What Culture, and I'll see you soon. Bye.